If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. For one, it's free, and there are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will also distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So make sure you download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Welcome to Growth with Portia, a weekly conversation for your personal and professional growth. Here is your host, Portia Booker.
Hey listeners, welcome to Groove with Portia. I'm your host, Portia Booker, and yes, this is my real name. So, question for you. Did you bring your curious mind today? If so, I don't want to keep you waiting. Let's dive in. This conversation is number 2 in the series of honoring my beloved mother, Sharonne Lopez, who made her transition from Earth on July 7th, 2022. So today I am joined by a returning guest who is an evangelical overcomer. She's the author of From Bound to Found, a personal memoir of once being a prisoner of life's challenges to finding freedom through resilience. She is also the co-host of a Facebook live show titled Let's Talk About It with Angie and Rennee. So welcome back to Groove with Portia, Evangelist Rennee Hubb. How you doing today, Rennee?
I am doing great. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you welcoming me back.
Oh, as always, look, you're a lifetime lifer of Groove with Portia. So yeah, you'll always be able to come back on, especially because of the topic that we're discussing today. You've had lots of experience in this area, and we have to help other people to navigate this world, the complexities of grief, because there's always somebody who, what I call, speaks the language or lyrics of our song to life, and it just resonates well. So Rennee, you know I always love to start my conversations off with gratitude. What are you grateful for today?
I am grateful for life. I am grateful for family. And I'm grateful for just having the ability to see past, trials and tribulations.
Oh yeah, you took the test and turned it into a testimony. And I think that's what life is all about. And not all the time we're able to see that transformation within the moment of whether it's trauma, whether it's, working through some type of mindset block. We don't always see it right off the bat, but that's why it's often key for us to remain optimistic.
Yes.
In any situation. And so, Rennee, I'm just going to dive right in. For our listeners who are tuning in, our first conversation that you had with me back in 2020, you lost several family members within a short period of time. And so how did you go through the grieving process while maintaining your own mental well-being?
Honestly, I'm still going through the process. People tend to say that there's a certain time that you're supposed to be over a situation. No, it's not. Losing someone and trying to move forward, to me, it's a life-changing event. So I am still going through that process, but I'm learning how to live through it instead of just existing. So I'm actually living through the situation. And it's easier said than done, but you have to just hold on to your memories, and you still have to carry on with what you would normally do day to day. But you also have to know it's okay to take a moment to yourself. And I may have moments where I'm going to cry. I may be laughing about it. But it's okay to have those mixed emotions.
Oh, 100%, Rennee. And, we live in, to me, a society where crying tends to show weakness. So crying is often shamed out of you, especially, if you're someone who is more sensitive. And so, Rennee, what was it like, or what was maybe the limiting belief that you had to wrestle with in order to give yourself permission to cry and release those emotions instead of continuing to hold them in?
I'm generally like the strong one. So for me to show that side, it takes a lot. And honestly, it did not hit me until, I guess, a month after everything was done. And I'm walking in my living room and I literally just dropped to my knees and started crying. I'm like, like reality hit me. Like, your grandfather's not coming back, your grandmother, your niece, your nephew, they're not coming back. And that's when reality hit me. And I was just like, when I had a moment to myself, no one was around, I wasn't busy. I just had that moment to think. And I realized, like, it's okay to cry. It's okay to grieve. It's okay to miss them. But again, I had to get up. And that's the biggest thing. Cry, but get back up and try to do what you can to keep moving forward.
I love what you mentioned about getting back up, Rennee, because that's often something that is a trial for a lot of people who are in the grieving process. And as we know, grief takes time. Some people, unfortunately, are crippled by grief, depending on the loved one or friend, etc., their relationship, how long they've been gone. And so, Rennee, what would you say during that process of you being able to get back up, still obviously grieve your grandfather, your grandmother, your niece, and your nephew? What has really worked for you to keep yourself afloat and not be completely crippled by the grief process? Is it reflecting? Is it keeping your day busy? What would you say is really has been helpful for you throughout the grief process?
I would honestly say two things have been helpful for me. One, I was open with my pastor. Like, I sat down and I talked with him and I let him know this is what I'm dealing with. But also, counseling. There's nothing wrong if you feel like, okay, I've talked to my spiritual leader, I've prayed, but I need to speak to a licensed therapist, a doctor. It's nothing wrong with that. And I actually sat down and talked with the therapist because I needed to know, how do I move past tomorrow? How do I move past the next day? What do I do? And I needed someone to help me walk through that process and talk me through it, who did not know me personally, who could, give me sound advice without emotions being involved, no connection at all. And that's what she was able to do for me.
And Rennee, when you were going through therapy with a therapist who obviously had a third person eye view into your life and learning how to go beyond just living moment by moment to being able to see the next day, what would you say too was something that really made you feel open enough to speak to a therapist? Because we've had this discussion before that when it comes to mental wellness, especially in communities of color, there's that wrestling with the community stigma and also your own ego, like what you mentioned about always being the strong one. So, what would you say was that moment for you where you felt open enough to say, I can't continue to wear the strong Black woman cape?
The number one thing, and it's something that we all have to do, we have to admit that we need help. And it's nothing wrong with doing that. It doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you seem less than a person. It's someone who's saying, I am strong enough to realize I need help. I can't deal with this by myself. And that was my eye opener. I needed help outside of me trying to figure it out myself.
And Rennee, I always love to think of ways to comfort myself in moments of being alone where you're not always around family or friends. And so, what would you say, Rennee, is either an affirmation or a scripture that brings you comfort when you find yourself really grief is trying to really hold you captive? Can you maybe share that with our listeners? Because maybe there's just something that they need to hear or see that can give them comfort, where when they're in that process they're not being held down and unable to get back up.
Sure. Two scriptures come to mind. And one is one of my favorite scriptures, and it's Psalms 30:5, where it says that weeping may endure for a night, but joy is coming in the morning. That's a reminder, like night times it's dark, we're sad at night, but it says joy comes in the morning, like morning time. Who isn't happy to see the sun out? It's bright, it's shining. So that's the scripture that like is so important to me, like to understand. One, God is letting us know we're going to have trials, we're going to have dark days. But if we hold on into the morning time, guess what? Joy is here. The sun is here. It's light. You can, morning time, you get a fresh perspective. So that's why I say, hold on to Psalms 30:5. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy is coming in the morning. Your trial is going to end. Just hold on.
My uncle says that to me often, that joy comes in the morning. And you're right. For me, getting a little personal here, for a couple weeks. I mean, my mom, like I mentioned, transitioned on July 7th. And obviously, today is the 27th. And even though it hasn't been a full month, I found myself really struggling hard in the early mornings and at night, like what you mentioned, because the world is still, everybody's going to bed or getting ready for bed or off to their own endeavors. While in my world, this person is missing. And I remember a couple days ago when I woke up and the sun was just shining so bright. I mean, of course, it was hot as all know what. So, like, I'm drenched in sweat because I live in an ancient house, but that's for a whole other day. And I just remember smiling at the sun's radiance. And it seemed to me as though that was, hey, good morning. Every day is not going to be kind of like the rain cloud that you see in cartoons that, what is it, from Charlie Brown with Linus with the cloud over his head or whatever. You're not always going to have that.
Yes.
You're going to have the sun come back again and tell you, hey, today is a new day.
That's right.
It's a moment for you to change your life, to inspire somebody else, and to make a new plan or whatever you want to do.
Yes, it is. And that's what the morning time does. We wake up, we're refreshed, and every day is not going to be the same. You're going to have good days, you're going to have bad days, you're going to have days where you're just laughing uncontrollably because you're thinking about the good times. And then you're going to have the bad days where you miss your family member. And that's a part of life. But like I said, the most important thing is that you keep moving forward because that person is no longer here, but you still have to live. You still have to survive. You still have purpose in you every day that you wake up.
Rennee, I love what you brought up just now about those days where you're laughing uncontrollably as though they're in your presence. And I've had those where me and my brother will be sitting downstairs and be like, oh yeah, mommy would say this, or, oh, well, let's make sure that this is cleaned up because we don't want any type of anything to,
Yes.
stir. And so you're right. Sometimes even when I'm like talking to my friends, I'm like, oh, my mom would have a phrase for that. And I'll literally say what my mom would say. And we just all bust out laughing. But then I have those moments where like a song will come on.
And it'll remind you.
Is one of my mom's songs. And it's bittersweet.
Yes.
I'll say some moments I feel comforted as though she's close by. And other moments I feel that absence. But for me, what brings me comfort still in that moment is knowing that that was her song and that memory is embedded in that song forever for me. It may not have the same type of meaning for other people, but for me, that song, obviously, however old it is, whatever it may be, it always has that timelessness of her memory, no matter what.
Oh my gosh. Yes, I understand. That's why it's so important to hold on to memories. And I'm glad you said that also. That's why it's important for us to make memories.
Mm-hmm.
We could be so focused on negative things and so busy with all these different things that we forget to make memories. And that's why we can't take life for granted. We can't take people for granted. Oh, I'll talk to them tomorrow. Tomorrow's not promised. Whatever memory you can make today, make that memory, focus on today, and let tomorrow worry about tomorrow.
Oh, yes, Rennee. Absolutely. Absolutely. Make that time, carve it out, do whatever you need to do,
Yes.
because people are here today sometimes and gone within an hour.
Yes.
So we're going to take our first quick break right here on Group Portia. Everybody, stick with us. We will be right back. All right, everybody, welcome back right here on Group Portia. I'm joined remotely with our favorite Miss Rennee Hubb, and we've just been having a great conversation, of course, about going through the grief process and ways to not allow yourself to be fully crippled while in the grief process. Rennee, I knew that you'd be the perfect one to answer this question. As a woman of faith, I know there's a lot of people who, when their loved one transcends to their new assignment, they wrestle on the fence with their faith. And so, Rennee, how did you keep your faith strong and not turn away from God during your time of grief?
Ooh, I actually ran to God during my time of grief. And this is why I always say that when you're going to church or when you're listening to a message or a song, a sermon, a word, you have to make sure you're locked in. And the Bible says also to hide the word in your heart. And the reason why it's hitting your heart, because you don't know what's going to happen, who you're going to lose, what's going to happen to a loved one. You need that word in your heart. And because I had the word in my heart, and I also had people praying for me and around me, that helped me stay focused. It helped me run to God, because I tell people all the time, and the scripture says it, like, where am I going to go apart from God? For me, I can't go anywhere, because I know he wakes me up every day. I know that it's because of him that I live and breathe and have my very being. I know that it's the word that keeps me, when things are coming to attack my mind and my heart, and I'm doubting, I can't do it on my own. So that's why I knew, my faith had to be grounded, because to lose 4 family members in 45 days, if I did not have the word of God in me, I would not have been able to stand. There's no way that I would still be here.
Oh, 100%. And that's why I knew this question would be very key for you, considering that 4 key family members of yours were here and literally gone. And I know that a lot of people, they become angry, they become resentful, and they don't understand. And so then their emotions, and there's nothing wrong with our emotions. It's all about the actions you take is what can either be good or bad. And oftentimes our emotions become the forefront of our judgment. And so a lot of people will turn away from their faith. They will turn to other things for coping and for comfort. And I know that there's a lot of people who, and I know for a minute, I was in that position. I'm like, hey, what the heck? Why, God, did you take my mom away from me? Why, and we, from childhood, we're often taught that, the bad go downstairs and the good go upstairs. But with this transition with my mom, I don't see things from that lens anymore. I see a difference in the way that we should view life and death. I think in the life that we currently live right now, we need to look at every moment as precious and not be consumed with so much woulda, coulda, shoulda. But I know I went on like a little tangent there, but
No, I
I know
agree.
that I wrestled. I
Yeah.
wrestled for a minute. And Rennee, for our listeners who are tuning in, if they're in that position, like where you were, you ran to God. But if they are feeling the I'm on the fence, I'm jumping on the other side, what tips can you leave with them, Rennee, to really stir them back to their faith? Because I feel like my faith is what has kept me grounded. And because my faith is so strong, that foundation keeps my soul from being completely shattered. So, what can you leave with our listeners today, Rennee, who might be in that boat of running the opposite direction?
As you were talking, scripture came to mind, Job 2:10, where his wife was telling him, you've lost everything. You've lost your children, your home, you lost everything. And she was telling him to curse God. And Job replied to her, he said, shall we accept the good from God and not the bad? And I always tell people, we always say, oh, God, you blessed me with this job. You blessed me with this. And we accept it. But we forget that as much as we accept the good, we have to accept the bad. And the same attitude with the good, we have to keep it with the bad. And it's not always easy. But if you can trust him that God, you're a loving God, you bless me with this, we have to trust him and know that even in tragedy, that it's working for our good. And even for you or someone who lost a loved one, yes, you're in pain, but you're going to be able to help the next one to let them know, I know where you are, understand what you've been through. Trust me, this is something personal, but you can help the next person through it. And I always say, people know when you have been through something, and they know when you're just talking from something that you read. So you can't tell somebody that you can lose your mother and guess what? You can still live. You're going to cry, but you can get up if you haven't been through that. And that's the difference. Everything that we go through has a purpose and it's for a reason. And that's what we have to understand. God, what is it that you want to show me through this situation? What is it that I need to learn in this situation as well?
Rennee, you literally just walked right into my next question because I'm a firm believer that every event, every
Mhm.
person we meet in our life, every situation is a teacher for us if
Yes.
we are open. And so,
Yes.
Rennee, for you, what would you say is the message that you received from the passing of your grandfather, your grandmother, your niece, and your nephew? What would you say was the message for you here on earth to pursue a mission or to fulfill something? What would you say that message is from their passing on to you to live out something? What would you say that is?
The message that I received was to inspire people to live and to let people know that through tragedy, God still has a purpose and a plan. And that's the message that I received through that. And literally, when I received Inspiring to Live, I realized like, that's what you put me here to do, God. You put me here for a purpose and a reason. And that reason is to bring people who may be at the end of death and feel like I'm ready to give up and let them know, no, you're going to live. Like I've been where you are. I understand, but no, you are going to live. And that's what I learned through that. That God will be there in the darkest moments and he will pick you up. And through that adversity, spiritually, you're going to grow because you're going to be able to reach more people. You're going to have a powerful testimony. And that's what God did for me.
You said my favorite word, adversity, and now I see it a little differently. It kind of reminds me of when you look at the word adverse, okay? You add another verse to your testimony. So I literally
I
just
love that.
thank you for sharing that,
Yes.
Rennee. I needed that little epiphany. That was brilliant. And it's so true because when you're going through something, especially
Mhm.
the loss of someone so close, we're often clouded by the emotions of unfairness, sadness, resentment, anger. And even for me right now, even though the wound is still so new and open, what I've learned so far, and some people may agree or not agree with me, but I feel as though my mom, her passing taught me two things. One, her transition is for my transformation into the person who I'm supposed to be. And let me elaborate more on that, because I noticed when my mom had passed within the first 2 weeks, I saw several childhood traumas resurface for me. And I said, you know what? I've been in this boat before. I've been in this seat before. But the difference today is I'm a little wiser. And so now, what action am I going to take now to really step into my next level of life and not be crippled by the mistakes that I made in the past?
That's right.
The second thing I learned from my mom's passing is that anything in life has a meaning as long as you're open to it.
That's right.
And each person passes down something to us to keep the circle of inspiration alive. And my mom, we did a balloon release for her instead of doing like the traditional funeral thing. I wanted people who came to my mom's balloon release to feel inspired, to feel uplifted, to feel the positive energy that my mom would always share with our friends, our loved ones, our family. I wanted that same energy to stay prevalent and not let it go just because she's not physically here. And so I think, too, to continue on this wave, no pun intended, my mom passing to me was not really a bad thing in my mind. For yes, we're creatures of habit. We don't want to let things go.
Yes.
But like the saying goes, if you love something, let it go. And if it's meant to be yours, it will come back.
Yes.
But when somebody passes on, for me, that's them coming back to you, just in a different form. And that's what I've learned throughout this little journey so far of navigating my mom no longer being here. I don't know, Rennee, do you want to add anything to that? I know I went on like a long little tangent.
No, you're right. I mean, you grow, and that's what some people, we have to make that choice, that decision to grow. When I lost my mom, it's like reality hit, like she's not here. What are you going to do with the rest of your life? And that's what I'm saying when I say live, just like you said. You're transforming, you're growing, you're moving forward. And it doesn't mean that you didn't love that person. It just means I love you, and I'm going to continue what like you said, the legacy that she left, you're going to continue it. And that's what we're supposed to do. I was watching something yesterday, and a preacher said the worst thing for a leader is when they die, the vision that they had dies with them. He said, when you are a leader or you are a family member, a mother or a father, you put enough in that person to know that when you leave and you transition, that person is going to carry on what you have started building. And that's what you're saying. She's no longer here, but the legacy continues with me, and I'm going to build. And that's what we should be doing.
Oh, 100%. And that's why I knew when my mom had been telling me and my brother since we were teenagers that she did not want a traditional funeral. I can tell you, I can hear it now as we speak. Her telling us, don't you dare do all that. I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but I can hear it literally verbatim as though she's standing next to me telling me this. And I knew that I wanted something different. And it takes that, and I think oftentimes when these moments occur for us, we have a choice to either take action or allow other things to paint the picture for us instead of us taking that first initiative right off the bat. So we're going to take another quick break right here on Good Portia. Everybody stick with us. We will be right back. All right, everybody, welcome back right here on Group Portia. I'm doing remotely with Rennee Hubb, and we're just continuing our conversation on navigating the complexities of grief and ways to not allow it to cripple you 100%. And so, Rennee, for our listeners who are tuning in, if they would love to connect with you and learn more about you, is there a social media handle or website you can share with us today?
Yes, you can find me at Inspiring, the number 2, Live. And that's on Instagram, Facebook. Find me on both of those. Also, I have a website. My website is Inspiring, the number 2.live as well.
Excellent, excellent. Rennee, I know that when you reached out to me to say, hey, let's talk about healing, I could not say no. I'm like, yes, that's an absolute yes. So, Rennee, let's talk about the healing journey while grieving, right? Because let's be honest, I don't think a lot of people realize that you're not just grieving the loss of your loved one, you're also grieving a part of you. Your identity associated with them is also lost. And so, Rennee, where can individuals start? What did that look like for you to begin that healing journey?
Honestly, I had to take a step back. I want to say about 30, 45 days, I didn't do anything related to business. Even for ministry at church, just went and sat and just soaked up the word. But because when something like that happens, your routine changes, your life changes, and you don't know what that looks like. What's the new norm for you? So I honestly say it's nothing wrong with pausing from everything, taking some time to just focus on you, to pray and really ask God, what am I supposed to be doing? Because there may be times, like for my family members, like my grandparents, we would go to the store with them, take my grandmother to the doctor. You don't have to do that anymore. So what do you do with that time? And it's easy to just find random stuff to do, but if it doesn't have a purpose to it, you're just doing anything. So I honestly say take a break. It's nothing wrong with pausing and just sitting still, praying for direction.
Oh, yeah, I can definitely relate, Rennee, even though I'm in this process very early right now. For me, what has been my saving grace has been reflection. I probably reflect for,
Yes.
I can say I'll say minimum 2 hours a day, minimum.
Okay.
It depends because some days I just feel more comfortable
Yes.
expressing myself through writing and journaling
Yeah.
instead of trying to answer a bunch of people who are asking me, hey, how are you holding up? How are things going? My thoughts cannot always go in a coherent sentence back to other people because my emotions are all fighting for the center stage. I mean, some days I'm feeling really great and productive. Other days I feel the heavy sadness, the heavy grief, the depression, the anger, resentment. And I have to catch my thoughts. I really have to be mindful, not have a mind that is full of my thoughts in those moments of me feeling emotionally heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Because as we
Yes.
both know, it's bittersweet grief. You're empty, you're feeling empty because a part of you is no longer physically here.
Yes.
But then you're also full of all of your emotions because all of them are fighting for the seat of attention. Sometimes there's multiples, depending on your relationship with that person, depending on if it was sudden versus if it was, something progressive, like in my mother's case. Me and my brother, my mom, a lot of people would share with us that they didn't know how sick my mother was. And me and my brother, we both honored my mom's word. My mom did not want the rest of the world to know that. We knew, but we kept that promise to her. And so me and him, we both knew that the time was ticking. We both knew that. And I know not everybody else has that notion or that knowing. And so that's why for me, again, I find more comfort in my notebook than to actually try to explain to other people.
Yes. Yeah. I definitely agree with that. I do. And you're not wrong for that. And we all have our different ways of our going through our process, and sometimes journaling and writing is a way to do it. And just what you said, like with your mom, like when my mom passed, we had no idea that she was, her health was in a condition that it was. We knew she was sick, but she kept it to herself. And some people do that because they want to live a normal life and they don't want sympathy, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the way that you handle things as far as like journaling, I feel like that's a more private way, because I feel like sometimes we need to get back to that, because we put so much on social media, and then people are like, I don't want to talk to anybody about it, but you just put it on social media. So if you don't want to talk about it, just like you said, get your journal, write your feelings out, because sometimes we may have good days, bad days. We put all that stuff on social media. People are going to be like, what's really going on with you now? So I definitely agree with that. I do.
Yeah, journaling, I've always been a writer, Rennee, and journaling has always allowed me to freely express my emotions, my thoughts without being clouded by other people's preconceived judgments. And even their energy sometimes can be a little unsettling, because they might love you to pieces. They want to listen to you, but at the same time, my brain, I'm an overthinker. I'm like, are you listening to really listen to me? Or are you listening to, you want to listen, but at the same time, you have your mind is someplace else. So it's like you're providing, I guess you, if the best way to put it, you're providing that support, but it's not a full intentional support. It's like, hey, I'm here, but I'm really not here. And I would rather just resort to going inward instead of outward. And I know that that looks different for for everybody. But I think for me, or, or even our listeners who are tuning in, I think it's key to pour your energy, that grief, into something creative. At least that's what has been very helpful for me. Like, a lot of people don't know that I know how to play a few instruments. That's something that's kind of hidden. I play by ear. I don't read sheet music, but I've taken myself out of the house. That's another thing. I've scheduled time out of the house every single day, whether it's for an hour, whether it's for 2 hours, just to go and just be in the company of other people, whether it's complete strangers at the store or whatever. So last week I took a stroll up to Guitar Center, and I sat in the acoustic guitar room for an hour playing their acoustic guitars. My fingers still have blisters on them, but it was worth it. It was so worth it to just allow my emotions to just pour through this beautifully crafted Epiphone acoustic guitar.
Yes, I love it. And that's what we have to do, because sometimes when we are left alone with ourselves and with our thoughts, we are our worst enemy. And sometimes you do have to get out, take a walk, get some fresh air, just take a deep breath. So just focus your mind and just clear your mind, really. So everything that you said is right. Like going to focus from the negative to something positive, write, draw, find an activity, whatever it is, but do something positive, read your word, pray. So yes.
Rennee, I gotta ask this because I know that I find myself wrestling with this, where I want to keep my mind occupied, but I don't want it to be fully engulfed in several things to hide or mask my grief. And so, how did you navigate that, Rennee, of not indulging into too much work, into too much other activities, and allowing yourself to still grieve? How did you find that balance?
Like I said, I shut everything down for a period of time and realized one, I was just driving myself and running myself in the ground by trying to do five different things and not accomplishing anything. So I prayed, I shut everything down. And when I, received my answer from God, it was like, this is what you need to focus on, this right here. And that's something that we have to realize too. Sometimes we are try to keep ourselves so busy so that we don't have to focus on life issues, what's going on. So you're being pulled 20 different ways, not accomplishing anything and not dealing with the issue. But once you finish focusing on those 20 different things, the issue is still there. So that's why I say pray before you start projects, partnerships, anything, because the worst thing to do is to start 20 different things and then you realize you're tired and you didn't accomplish anything.
Ooh, ain't that the truth? And Rennee, that's what I tend to still wrestle with a lot is not allowing my mind to be too heavily focused on other projects. Because again, grief is a process,
Yes, it is.
but it's not permanent. But it's during the grief process, to me, is where we have to learn the importance of setting boundaries. It's really like you've been stripped of several obligations or things that you knew. So now you have to establish that new routine, that new way of living. And I've got so many friends that have shared with me, oh, you have to keep your mind busy. Well, I can't keep my mind 100% busy. And
Yes,
I don't want to because I
that's
don't
right.
want to fall in that trap of I'm existing. I'm existing every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, Rennee, please elaborate on that because I know you want to say something. Go ahead.
But that's what it is, though. People feel like I'm busy, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Okay, you are, but are you? I'm trying to. How do I phrase it? Are you living life, or is life living you? And that's the difference. Like you could be so busy, and I see it every day, and I'm just looking, and I'm like, okay, one of these days, this person's going to realize I need to stop all this running around that I'm doing, not accomplishing anything, and really deal with the issue. And that's the worst thing to do is to be so busy because you see people all the time. If a loved one passed, they're like, I missed all this, I missed this, I missed that. Why did you miss it? Because you were busy doing 20 different things and not paying attention to what was really going on right in front of you.
Ooh, 100%. 100%. And I love what you literally just said. Are you living life or is life living you? So, on
Yes.
that note, we are going to take one more quick break right here on Group Portia. Everybody, stick with us. We will be right back. All right, everybody, welcome back right here on Group Portia. Well, Rennee, I thank you again for coming on back on Group Portia. Like they say, third time is a charm sometimes, but I think each time with you is always a charm. And so, Rennee, for our listeners who are tuning in, if they want to again connect with you and learn more about you, is there a website or a social media handle you can share with us today?
Sure. My social media is inspiring, the number two, live. And also my website is inspiring, the number two, dot live as well.
Excellent, excellent. So you can definitely connect with Rennee at your leisure. Rennee, as we've already hinted throughout this conversation, that grief looks different for each person. And what I have been wrestling with is a lot of people want to support me.
Mhm.
And I'm sure other people who have been in my boat, a lot of people want to support them. And they're often asked or told, hey, if you need anything, please let me know. And sometimes that can be overwhelming because when your mind is already clouded of so many other loose ends you have to tie up for your loved one, I can't think of another thing of what I might need. And so, Rennee, for our listeners who are tuning in, what tips can you leave for family members, close friends, loved ones, acquaintances who want to support someone in their time of grief, but not, but support them in a healthy way? What tips can you leave with them today?
Lots of times it's not what you say, it's the fact that you're very present and you're there. So being there for that person, they may need you to cook a meal for them. They may need you to just sit there with them as they cry. They may need you to help them around the house. And people feel like I have to say something. You don't always have to say something. It's your presence, it's being there. It's being there. You hear a need, you just act on it. So that's the most important thing, being there, praying for them, acting on whatever they may need. And if you don't know what to say, don't say anything at all. Because sometimes what we feel may be helping someone, it actually may hurt them. So if you don't know what to say, you haven't been through it, just I'm here. If you need me, there's a need, I'm going to help you out. And that's what you do.
Rennee, I love what you just mentioned about being careful about word choice.
Yes.
And one of the things that I tend to find is a lot of people will say, well, she's at peace. They're no longer suffering. They're in a better place. I'm sorry. Let me be blunt for a minute. Only I can say that. Only I, as her daughter, can say that.
Yeah.
Because for some people, hearing that is triggering. Hearing that is traumatic. Hearing that particular phrase of they are at peace or in a better place puts somebody back into the day that person transitioned. At least I know it's done that for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead, Rennee. I know you wanted to elaborate.
I'm glad you said that because, some may see it that way. And I did not look at it that way until you said something. And now that you said it, I'm like, it actually had me thinking. But for me, I know for my loved ones that were in pain, I'm like you said, I can say they're no longer suffering. They're in a better place because I personally knew them. I knew what they experienced and what they went through. But you actually gave me a different perspective. If I did not know the person or the life that they lived or whatever the case may be, I can't tell you that they're in a better place. I can't tell you that they're no longer suffering. So you open my eyes to see things from a different lens.
And the circle of inspiration continues.
Yes.
But it's true though, Rennee. That's really how I feel at times is when people are telling me, well, she's in a better place and she's at peace. You can't say that. Because for me, if she was in a better place, she'd still be here.
Yeah.
Right. So again, it's just being mindful of how we're communicating. And I love what you mentioned about if you don't know what to say, don't say anything.
Yes.
And that sometimes to me is a little overwhelming when I get messages from, I'm probably up to over 1,000 something messages on Facebook that I have not been able to return back to yet. And a few of them that will come through, like, Facebook will remind you, hey, respond to whatever. And sometimes when I read them, the first thing I see is I don't know what to say.
And that's okay.
Yeah. And, I'm thinking in my mind, well, you said something. So,
I know you're thinking about me. Yeah.
Yeah, you said something.
Yes.
And for me, I appreciate just the thought.
Yes.
I do.
Yeah. Because it takes a few minutes to message somebody and let them know I saw what your message. I'm just letting you know, thinking about you. And sometimes that's what people want. They to know, okay, this person like really saw something and saw me, and they let me know that it's going to be okay, or they're thinking about me. Sometimes that's all you have to say. Thinking about you, you were on my mind. I'm praying for you. That's it.
Yeah. And acknowledge too that they got the message, even if they can't respond back to you.
Yeah, definitely.
Because,
yes.
Sometimes it's overwhelming. Sometimes it can, again, reopen that wound for some people that there's a part of them missing.
Yes.
And I know for me, it's just, I have so many. And that's why I often have to go on my Facebook and put out a little video and say, hey, people, Portia needs a little time.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that.
I'm not ignoring you guys, but I see you, but I don't have the bandwidth to respond to each and every message that I get.
Yeah. Because if you're not okay, you're not going to be able to help anybody else. And people don't realize we have so many friends on social media, but at the end of the day, you are still responsible for you. You have to take care of you. It's you know what I'm saying? And we have to learn to put ourselves sometimes before anybody else. My friend Angie, she always uses the analogy that when you're on an airplane and they tell you if it goes down, put your life jacket on first. So save your, you know what I'm saying? And we forget that sometimes because we want to help, we want to be there for everybody else. But if you're not okay for you, you're no good to nobody else.
Oh, yeah. And it's so funny that you bring that up, Rennee, because we're reminded of that all the time to put your oxygen mask or life jacket on first.
Yes.
But we're just so accustomed to caring for everybody else.
Yep.
So we really have to relearn again how to prioritize our well-being.
Yes.
And also let go of that ideology of people are going to not accept me because I put myself first.
That's right.
We got to really get back into that. Oh,
yes,
Rennee, I knew this conversation was going to be good no matter what. I mean, it's Rennee. I mean, and I knew because of the nature of what has transpired in my life, I knew I wanted a conversation that was uplifting and could really give people an alternative, another way to heal, another way to look at life and death, and another way to even enhance their own life. Because it doesn't have to be, grief is not just somebody physically leaving.
Yeah.
Grief can also be stemmed from the loss of a job, an opportunity. It's a loss where a part of your identity has been fractured.
Yes.
So, we have to, again, unlearn the original way that we looked at grief and relearn ways to, whether it's cope, learn how to navigate it, and also help other people from the experiences that we've gone through.
Yes.
And so, Rennee, as always, thank you so much for coming on. We are going to be wrapping up here soon. And I always love to save this question for last. You have left us, Rennee, with lots of wisdom, food for thought from your personal journey of losing 4 family members in 45 days. And I know that not everybody can often come back to life without being somewhat crippled by that experience, especially because they were so close to you. And so, Rennee, what words of inspiration Can you leave with our listeners today? Whether it's someone who was once in your shoes, who lost several close family members in a short period of time, or if it's someone who is going through the grief process, whether it's from the loss of a loved one or from whether it's the opportunity of a job or anything like that, and they want to try to heal or work through their grief in a healthy way. What words of inspiration, Rennee, can you leave with our listeners today?
I would say first, pray. Second, I would say, the Bible talks about going through the valley of shadow of death. The key word is go through, meaning you don't stop. You have to push through that valley. Valleys are deep, they're dark, and you just don't know what to expect. And that's what life is sometimes. It has highs, it has lows, as low as a valley, but you have to go through. You have to push through. So pray, push through. Every day that you wake up, know that God has a purpose and a plan for your life. Seek him for that purpose and his plan for your life. And those are my words of inspiration.
See, Rennee, I knew that you would bring a good message for our listeners because it's so true. You have to push through no matter what it is. Grief is a process. It's definitely a process. It's not permanent. It's not the wave of a magic wand and we're all okay the very next day. Healing takes time.
Yes, it does.
Healing takes work. Healing requires tears to be shed. Healing requires reflection. But the big key part of healing is you grow.
Yes.
You will grow into the person who you're supposed to be. And it's uncomfortable. They talk about growing pains when we're teenagers to when we're becoming adults. It's that uncomfortableness of life. But through the uncomfortable, we have to embrace that new change that is before us. And that's for us to become and transform into the people that we're supposed to be.
Yes. Yeah.
I know I just went on a long tangent again. I apologize.
No, you're fine. You are fine.
Well, everybody, that was Evangelist Rennee Hubb that you heard from again. And that concludes another episode of Grew with Portia, everybody. Thanks for listening and have a good evening.